On today's episode of Creative Questions, we have a creative powerhouse. As a creative, he has done a little bit of everything in the design space and done it all really well. On today's episode, we have Ritesh Gupta, an optimistic Indian American with a soft spot for mission-driven organizations. Ritesh Gupta is a creative industry veteran with a background in design, UX UI, production, strategy, art direction, and copywriting, to name a few. He has worked at agencies like Wieden+Kennedy and Hyperakt. He also led rebrands by collaborating with RGA, Mother Design, and Sagmeister Walsh. Some of his past clients have included the Ford Foundation, New York Times, and the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum. His work has proven that businesses and communities can benefit from embracing a wider breadth of experiences and viewpoints. Ritesh has also worked with 2 Shark Tank companies, is the founder of Useful School, design director for Hyperakt, and volunteer for Where Are the Black Designers. Ritesh's Useful School is chipping away at traditional design school dynamics with a pay-what-you-can 12-week virtual design program for people of color by people of color. Ladies and gentlemen, Ritesh Gupta. All right, I think we're going. How's it going, Ritesh?
Doing well.
I think it's kind of.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I'm stoked. Like I saw you interview Trey Seals, like one of my favorite type designers ever, and yeah, honestly, applications are flowing for Useful School. Like things are going really well. I'm healthy, happy. Things are good.
Dope. I think we have to mention us wearing matching hats.
Yeah. Wait, so where'd you get yours?
I think I got it from... Where did I get this hat from? I saw the corduroy and I was like, I gotta have it. Oh, yeah. I think it was in a mall or somewhere. I think it was Urban Outfitters. That's where it was.
Got you.
I had to grab it.
So, yeah, mine, I got from this store called Manhattan, which is this was the cheapest thing that they had in the store. I wanted to get something from there. I love the store, but everything, so much stuff there is so expensive and stuff. So shout out to Manhattan. They're in the Lower East Side, but yeah, I was just I just love this. It looks like the Yankees hat.
It does,
but it's not. It's an MH instead of a.
I just noticed it.
yeah. So it's just so some people are wait, what is that? Where'd you get that from? So, anyways. That's what I got, what I have to share about that. But I'm stoked that we're both kind of matching, repping New York today.
For sure. My dad's from Brooklyn, so
okay, that's where I'm sitting right now.
Got a little bit in me. So
yeah,
let's go ahead and kick it off. Get the conversation flowing. So my first question for you is, I like to I know a little bit about you, but I want to kind of get it started from the beginning. So my first question for you is kind of, where does your creative journey start?
So my creative journey started probably, I would say, the most tangible place where it started was when I graduated college and I started at my dream agency, Wieden+Kennedy.
Yeah.
And the way I got that gig was I went to a networking event. I met Portia, the recruiter at the time. Shout out to Portia Monroe. And she and I just kind of kept in contact, and much to the chagrin of my parents and other people, I just didn't have a job right after graduating college. So I for the UCLA where I went, essentially I was there from 2008 to 2012, and 2012 hit summer, and I was out of a job. So I kind of emailed everybody I could, and Portia responded to my emails yo, are you hiring? She's oh, absolutely. Actually, good timing. We got this gig, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I ended up doing it. It was a gig that I did not initially see myself doing, which was essentially what they called like digital media planning, which was essentially like planning how much an advertiser would spend on a digital platform. And what I would do specifically was I would like fight as much as I could for like social media budgets, and say, all right, ABC Family, Disney, some of these other brands I used to work for, I would basically be like, hey, Facebook's blown up, Instagram's blown up, like Twitter, Google search, like all these platforms are blown up. We recommend that you put a lot of your dollars into advertising your shows or like whatever products, services, whatever on those. Once we got the budget, I would be like actually in Facebook, like doing all this multivariate data analysis on like what creative combinations worked best with which audience. At the time, like Facebook had like all these different creative opportunities, like things that you could do and not do. So it was up to me to like figure out which ones worked best. It was a good time. It was high octane. It was like I was like putting like 8 figures a year into social media platforms and stuff. It was a lot of money. And I was like, at any given time, there might have been like, I think I remember one big campaign we did. It had like 1,000 creative combinations, like creative, the where it was placed, the type of like copy, the type of imagery, the specific audience, the sub audience, like all the stuff. Like, yeah, it was crazy. It was really nuts. But I was an economics graduate, so like I knew data really well. And it was like a great way for me to like get in the creative industry, but not really be like a copywriter or like an art director. Gotcha. Eventually, there was some stuff that I helped more directly with the copywriting and stuff like that while I was there. But yeah, that was my initial foray. But yeah, if anybody is like trying to get in the creative field and is not quite sure if they're like a quote unquote good enough copywriter or good enough art director, there's still a lot of opportunities you can have in the space, especially on the media side, where you can, especially if you're like really interested in data, I would highly recommend like doing digital media planning.
Oh, dope. Yeah, that's an interesting answer to that, because most people are like, well, I got Photoshop for the first time, or like, I was a painter or an artist as a kid, but that's just as creative as anything else, like trying to put those combinations together. I had listened to another podcast you were on, and you come from like a science background. Like you went to college for physics at one time, right?
Oh, okay. So that's a really funny story. So I came to UCLA as a business economics and astrophysics double major.
That's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, and what ended up happening was I looked at the syllabus, like what my next 4 years would look like if I did that, and it just like I wouldn't have had a social life, like I wouldn't have honestly I would have been miserable. Like astrophysics, like I was barely exposed to physics like in high school. My teacher that I had was like not good. It was like a relatively easy A. Like I didn't do well in the at the time it was like an international baccalaureate. I was like in the IB program. I didn't do well on the exam. None of us in the class did. And so I just like had like this kind of like rose-colored glasses of sorts where I was just like, oh yeah, even though I had a bad experience, like I definitely want to continue. So like my dream was to work for like NASA or something like that and like study black holes, and like it was just like it just wasn't. It wasn't like it wasn't gonna work out. Like I was much more interested in, as I like got to know myself more, I was much more about a different type of thing, and I'm glad that I told myself that I would do astrophysics and business at the same time, because it allowed me to very quickly realize like that it wasn't for me. Gotcha. Versus like trying, like not thinking about what I wanted to do and just kind of go into college being like, all right, let me just like try a billion things. Yeah. What I did was I said, all right, this is like one thing I think I'm really interested in. I tried it for like a semester. Well, they had quarters. They're a quarter system. I tried it for a quarter and I was like, nah, this is not the vibe. Then I went to my like other like thing on my list, then the other thing. And so eventually I was like, all right, you know what? Let me just focus only on business economics. Gotcha. So like I usually try to, I usually try to recommend to people, like, if they're like trying to understand, like, if they want to go into a certain type of industry or take on a different type of role or whatever, just try it. Just say that you do it to yourself and be like, all right, I am this type of designer now, or I'm this type of designer now. Try to like kind of think about and kind of put a vision to it for a second, and then if it feels right, then keep doing it. If it doesn't feel right, then just like move on to something else. That's the way I approach things, and it worked really well. And I know a lot of people, especially students who are useful school, are like, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? And just like try it on for a little bit, try it on for a week, see how that hat feels. Try on a different hat. You know what I mean? And if that doesn't work out, try on a different hat.
I love that, because I went to school for mechanical engineering, and
Yeah.
I know the whole like I'm not gonna have a social life. I didn't. You're like you're at every beck and call. You're doing a lab or some type of homework, and I just didn't. I graduated, did the job for 5 years, and hated it. I was like, this is dumb. Like. So I eventually have to make that transition, but college is a great place to network and kind of meet those first relationships going into your career. So now that's what my drive is, to kind of have that for myself, where I make the network and build people around me kind of thing.
Yeah. And what I like to do, this like just naturally happens with my personality. And what I do is like every like 3 to 6 months, I just ask myself, like, am I happy doing the things I'm doing?
Love that.
And like, okay, so one of my favorite songs of all time is by Underground Resistance. It's called Transition. Have you heard of this song before?
No.
So Underground Resistance is like, I would say like in my like top like 5 favorite artists of all time.
Okay.
So Underground Resistance, they're like Detroit techno. And this song like has this really, really beautiful acapella of like, am I happy with who I am? Am I happy with what I'm doing? If not, make your transition, right? And there's a lot of ways you can interpret those lyrics. There's a bajillion ways. But it illustrates one of my points of like, just consistently ask yourself if you're happy with who you are and what you're doing. And I do that just naturally every like 3 to 6 months. I'm like, all right, is this feeling good? If so, I'm going to keep doing it. If not, I'm going to make my transition and try something else. Because a lot of people, especially like previous generations, what ends up happening, it was, and still is happening with some generations before us, is like they just like go into an industry and then they think they have to stay in that industry forever. Or they go into a job and they feel like they can't go to a different job. So I'm always like encouraging like students, graduates, like people I mentor, things like that, to be like, just ask yourself, consistently talk to yourself, like, are you happy with what you're doing? And there's another funny analogy. Do you know the meme that's like, what's your dream job? And then the person responds like, nothing, I don't dream of labor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that too. It's kind of like, all right, well, we don't dream of labor, but living in our society, like, what is the next best thing? The next best thing is being happy with the labor you do.
Yeah.
So I think just like consistently reminding ourselves, like, you could always do something different. You could always change it up, like all that kind of stuff. I think just was perfectly illustrated when I like went from astrophysics and business to just business, or when I went from digital media planning to like helping run a startup on the marketing side, like all those types of things. And that only happened because I was just constantly asking myself, am I happy, and just refusing to be miserable.
I love that. I did not even expect to get into that lane. Like, that's great. Like, because mine happened in 2020. Like, I lost my job and I was just like, what do I do? Like, at this point, I was unhappy. I was like, they didn't obviously care about my life and what was going on in my life. And like, what do? I can't just sit here and kind of run back to them. I got to go towards what makes me happy. So to think about it in 3 months to 6 month chunks, you could throw your whole thing and be like, hey, I'm out. Let me go try something else. So I love that. All right. Let's get into the second question I have for you, which is, what's your guilty pleasure TV?
So before I answer that, I want to give a shout out to somebody I really admire named Shannon Washington, because Shannon shared her interview. So Shannon is like a badass. So Shannon Washington essentially is RGA. She's like the chief creative officer of RGA.
Gotcha.
And she recently like kind of like did an interview when she was at Cannes. And I'll put up really quickly because I really want to share this before I mention my thing. And what she wrote was like, quote unquote, what do you actually do in the evening? Watch Real Housewives. And the question right before that was, what do you want people to think you do in the evening? And it's dream about creativity. And I think what I loved about that response is not only is she really truthful and really real about this stuff, but she's not sugarcoating, what happens. And that's why I like this question about guilty pleasures, because there's always like this, I think, like perception that like creatives always have to be creating, creatives always have to be like trying to be different than everybody else, like all that kind of like problematic thinking that's like very stressful and difficult. So big shout out to Shannon for just being real. And if y'all want to see the interview, maybe we can link it in the notes or something. I don't really know,
Sure.
but go follow her on LinkedIn. She's super dope. I feel like my guilty pleasure show right now is I'm actually not even guilty of it, but I'm guilty of the season, I would say. So
Okay.
I'm watching Money Heist right now,
Okay.
and it's all in Spanish. It is awesome. The first 2 seasons were so good. And now I'm on like season 3 or 4. I think season 4 or 5 or something. It's like not as great.
Gotcha.
I'm not necessarily guilty about it.
That's on
but I'll give you
Netflix.
a-
Is that on
I'll give you-
Netflix?
I'll give you a real answer. That's on Netflix,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I'll give you a real answer. Literally right after I like went running earlier today, I like put on YouTube, I put on like the Jersey Shore like fan favorite highlights of all time or whatever, and I just threw that on the background while I was like making myself like warming up some Ethiopian food.
Love that.
So I would that's the vibe, I think.
Yes.
Is like I'm a YouTube like premium subscriber, which is like it's getting expensive now. It's like gonna be like $20 a month or something like that, like $18.99 or whatever. But I love it because it combines. I'm able to get music and I'm able to get like no ads on all of my stuff, and I'm watching YouTube all the time. Like if we want to talk about YouTube, I'm super down. But like, yeah, I just threw up like a Jersey Shore highlights thing, and I had a blast just listening to it in the back of my mind. Because the way my mind works is I have 50,000 things going on in my head at any given time.
Yep.
And so I need to write stuff down, and I also need to have stuff in my calendar. And number 3 is I have to have something on the background. And the thing that I have on the background has to be something that I've already listened to or already have watched. I can't listen or watch like anything that I haven't before, because it'll be really distracting to me, and I'll switch on to that rather than doing like work. So I typically like put on like shows that I've watched in the past, or I'll put on like I'll repeat episodes of podcasts that I've listened to in the past. Like there's like multiple things that I've listened to, like, and I've cooked like through like bajillion times. So that's the way my mind works, and I feel like a lot of people who also have ADHD. I have ADHD. I got diagnosed last year. We need stuff like this to help us like be productive. So yeah, that would be my guilty pleasure thing is watching like reruns of like Jersey Shore or like other like reality TV shows or like other shows that like I've seen in the past. Like I think I would say I'm even guiltier. Like, so there's one thing to be guilty about watching new episodes of stuff, but I'm on another level where I'm watching highlights of stuff that like is a guilty pleasure. So it's like now that I'm thinking about it, it's like on another level of guilt.
That's funny because I do the same thing. I love YouTube, and I love YouTube for that fact. You can go and find like just random stuff. I'll re-listen to podcasts that I've heard a million times. Naruto's like one of those that I can go back to, and I'll just put Naruto episodes on while I'm watching or working. But one that I'm like this isn't a TV show, but like one that I'm super guilty of is like I'll re-listen to old comedy specials. So like Hannibal Buress's first comedy special is hilarious, and I'll just play that over and over again. And my wife's like, "You're listening to that again?" And I'm like, "It's enough. Like it works. It works for my mind where I don't check in too much." So
yeah, and one of the episodes that I really enjoy, specifically on podcasts, is by Radiolab. There's an episode called Debatable, and the episode dropped like a few years ago now. And it talks about one of my biggest passions, or at least one of my biggest passions when I was in high school, because I started my speech and debate team, and it's about speech and debate, and it's about this queer black man who wins the national debate tournament against all these like quote unquote prestigious schools, Harvard, Yale, Northwestern, et cetera, by essentially arguing that the form of debate is not inclusive, and the way he like builds his argument is so fascinating, is so interesting, and so empowering that if anybody is interested in debate or like thinking about how debate even is debated, definitely check that out. If you're like, I've never in my life have wanted to debate like competitively, also check it out, because like this is like an episode that like gets people like really interested and excited about what debate could look like. Anyways, that's an episode I really love. Again, Radiolab, Debatable, highly recommend it.
That's fire. Okay, let's hop into question 3. I think I came upon you. I was looking at Where Are the Black Designers, and I feel like I ran into your name somehow, and then I ran into Useful School. So my next question is like, what made you start Useful School, and what was kind of like the blueprint or the inspiration for it?
So, yes. First of all, shout out to Where the Black Designers. It was started in 2020. I've been a volunteer for a little while now. The administrators, the volunteers, the entire community is incredible. Obviously, centers Black designers, helps them get jobs, helps them get promoted, things like that. If anybody's not part of the Slack or following on Instagram, definitely check out Where the Black Designers. I started Useful School. It was a slow but very concerted like process to starting. So let me take you back to 2019. 2019, I was a speaker at the Brand New Conference. Mm-hmm. The Brand New Conference at the time had taken place in Las Vegas. It's run by Armin and his wife, and they have a great blog called the Brand New blog under like this umbrella organization called Under Consideration. It's my favorite website basically for branding. I visit it pretty much every single day to kind of look at like brands and like reviews of brands, the before and afters, things like that. And I know actually you've interviewed Chutzpah, the Chutzpah founders, right? The two sisters, right? And their work has been featured on
all
Brand
over
New
it.
a million times.
Yeah.
So anyways, shout out to them. So during 2019 at the Brand New Conference, I shared, when I was speaking, I shared about my rebrand that I did with Sagmeister Walsh called Pet Plate. It was a dog food brand.
Yep.
And as part of that presentation, I spent about half the time talking about the problems within the design industry. The fact that there are structures about the branding industry that are in place and have been placed for years and will continue to unfortunately be in place that are preventing people of color, queer folk, and other historically excluded groups from thriving. I basically took a lot of the data that the AIGA and Google survey had done previous to that speech. I crunched some of the numbers in Excel document, did some pivot tables. Again, going back to that whole data analytics thing we were talking about earlier. And I realized that there's a decent amount of people that are leaving the industry due to discrimination. Mm-hmm. And there's also, and we could just see it, we know it, we feel it. We don't necessarily need a number to
Yeah.
know that there's a lack of POC in the design industry as well. There's a lack of POC entering the industry. There's a lack of POC actually moving up in the industry
Yep.
to provide decision leadership, that kind of thing. So after I did the speech, I was on this crazy adrenaline rush, and I ended up linking up with a couple of people. There was my future boss, who I didn't know at the time, D-Roy, who runs a dope studio called Hyperakt,
Okay.
and also ran into Forrest Young, who at the time was the chief creative officer of Wolf Allens. He was there as the keynote speaker to talk about the Uber rebrand that he led, and he absolutely killed it on. And I mentioned to both of them, really quickly, I'm thinking about like how we could help POC and other historically excluded groups like get more gigs and all that kind of stuff and all that kind of stuff. And D-Roy was like vibing, and he was like really, really excited about it. And then I end up linking up with Forrest. Forrest at the time was like, you gotta do something about it. You gotta do something about it. How can I help? Like blah 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 blah. We ended up having like hanging out the whole weekend. We ended up going dinner. We ended up like hanging out, just really vibing. He ended up becoming a mentor of mine for this, and he's like, Ritesh, you better do this. Like you got to do something
That's
about
fine.
it. Like I want you to make something happen. And I was like, I got you.
Love
So
that.
I essentially took like a little while, like a month or two afterwards, like just thinking of like, what could this look like? What could this look like? I ended up like creating something that looked entirely different from what Useful School looks like today. But essentially, at the time, I had this idea of like, oh, what if I combine Instagram stories with TikTok? So you can swipe up and down, you can go left and right to like hear all these different people talk about different like topics and give different advice and all this kind of stuff. And it was a cool idea, but at the time, 2020 hit. I wasn't sure, and COVID unfortunately hit, and I wasn't sure if I could get that idea off the ground in the way that I wanted to. So I ended up just kept thinking, and then fast forward to like 2021, I was like, all right, I think I got the model down, which is what Useful School is now, which is essentially the world's first online, people of color centered design school that's focused on basically people who need it, people of color, and it's pay what you can. So that's the iteration I came up with. I ended up like announcing it in late 2021. Hustled, and here we are right now. I'm basically doing Useful School full time, and I'm absolutely thrilled with the results. We've had about 100 students go through our programs right now, and the students are incredible. They deserve all the flowers. And we focus right now on product design,
Okay.
branding, and we also have our 2 new classes coming up about financial wellness and decolonization and divestment. So I'm really stoked about what community we've built, and the fact that during the classes we meet weekly on Zoom. Nearly every single week is not only with me but also with a special guest that we have, and we've had a variety of just incredible guests come through. We do workshops, we do crit, we teach lessons, all that kind of stuff, and by the end of 12 weeks we have like better portfolios. People are getting gigs. People are getting both gigs that are in terms of full-time, part-time, freelance, all that kind of stuff. So I'm stoked with like the thing that's been happening, and the fact that we just have incredible community built around us.
That's dope. That's so dope. I appreciate you for even like doing it, like going in, because there's one thing to be like, oh well, I think we should put a fix to this, but people who are actually like problem solvers and figure it out, those are the people that move the world. Like I so much respect, so much appreciation, especially being a black designer and like seeing how hard it is. Like it's literally like, this is my second time being freelance, and the first time I had to like go into a job because I didn't have enough connections or have enough understanding of what this even was. So to be given an opportunity to learn that and be connected with people and work in community is amazing. So first off, that's really sick.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we created it, to be obviously useful. We also created it to be like more fun and more accessible. Like I think it's hard right now for for a lot of different types of designers and different types of disciplines at any level. And so if we felt that if we were going to build a community, we wanted to build it right. We wanted to build it with other like-minded individuals. We wanted to build it with like dope guest speakers that will provide as inspiration or potential mentorship or something for the students and graduates. We wanted to, sure, we'll like go over like the stuff you'd expect. We'll go over like the portfolio crits and like that kind of stuff. But we also really care about, after like doing multiple cohorts, people really care about being able to network with each other. People really care about like talking about, in a no bullshit way, talking about the actual problems we're actually talking about and we're actually experiencing. So like, how do I communicate better to my boss? Like, how do I divest and decolonize and not do the quote unquote like trendy white design, design of brands? Like, how do we do all these types of things? And so what I've noticed from the designers is when we're able to talk about real issues and have this kind of whole community-minded mindset, the outcomes happen, and people feel really good about it. And we've just like built something that's really nice. And so I'm still trying to figure out what the next iteration of this thing is. But in the meantime, we're going to continue doing more classes. We're going to continue getting super dope sponsors like we have. We're going to continue getting super dope students and just having a blast. This is a lot of fun. It's hard work. Like if you're a student that was part of Useful School, it's hard work. But we're hoping, given what we've seen in the past, you know, there's really good outcomes and people feel really great.
That's dope. Yeah, I love it. I appreciate it. I'm excited to see where it goes and like what does up look like from here, because it's already a big step. Like that's really dope. Okay, let's move into question 4. So what's been the most memorable moment of your career so far? That's Useful School, that's branding, that's everything you've kind of done in your life.
I would say there's a few. Can I choose a couple, or you just need one?
No, we're talking. Whatever.
All right, let me do. There's a couple. I mean, I think number one was like showing mom and dad, right? Showing the fam, like, hey, I can make a career in like this industry. Like showing the paycheck, like showing that I'm on my own, you know, that kind of thing. Like that was huge. Like especially for myself, like who I never really knew that a creative industry could make money and could be reliable and things like that. Like that was like really nice. That felt really good. So that happened a few years back, and that felt awesome.
What'd your parents say? How did were
I
they?
feel like they changed their tune across the years. When I first went to UCLA, I had no idea what creative industries were. I didn't know that you can make money in design. I didn't know that you can make money in a variety of these ways that are tangential to design. So I was like, it wasn't until like I went to a networking event for like advertising and designers and things like that I was like, oh wow, you can make it like a real career in this. My parents were like, hey, this is great. This is all well and good. As long as you're happy and you're able to do the things that you want to do, great, awesome, cool. I mean, full transparency, when I was like working at Wieden and even some places like right after that, like I wasn't making that much money. I was relying on my aunt, who like took me in for a little while to help me get my feet up, to help me get my footing. I like didn't like eat like, you know, I had to like rely on like my aunt to like make me like really nice Indian food. So shout out to my aunt, like things like that. Like I had to make ends meet in that way. And then eventually I was able to like find, you know, startups and larger gigs and things like that allowed me to like be on my own and all of that. So the tune definitely changed once I was on my own, and they're like, hey, we're really proud of you. And like hearing from a parent who usually doesn't say I'm proud of you or whatever, like it feels really fucking good, right? Like so it's like very, oh man, validation, you know, whatever. So like that felt really good to like be on my own and do all of that. So, but now they're like, yo, we are over the moon that you're doing your own thing with Useful School. Whatever we can do to support you, let us know. Like that's awesome. Like that's cool. Like, and that's like I really want to be, is like them not have to worry about me, you know, and you know, whenever we're on family vacation or whatever, like it's not like a conversation of like, hey, like beta's like miho, or beta's like son in Hindi, like, hey beta, like when are you gonna make more money, like when are you gonna like, it turned from those kind of conversations into something being like, hey, like tell us the latest and greatest, you know, like tell it what's the vibe now, like what are you up to, like what's your biggest, you know, what are you excited about, like all that kind of stuff. And that's a very different dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm no longer like anxious going, you know, seeing family. I'm more like excited, right, to be
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, when I get the question about how my job is going or how my career is going, like I'm stoked. So yeah, I think it's like been a difficult journey getting there. What, like, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that if I'm going to stay in design or whatever, I want to work for like mission-driven companies or organizations. I know that took me a long time to figure out. I was like, man, why am I working for certain companies that are like purely profit motivated or whatever? And it took me a while to figure out. Well, that's because that's not for me. Like I'm not like that type of person. So once I realized that was really great and really helpful. And yeah, now my parents are like super stoked. So I would say like that was a big one, is like parents being proud and like getting the first paychecks that were like much bigger than the peanuts that I was getting paid when I first started in design. I think that was like number one. I would say number two, like when I announced Useful School, I was so scared. Like I put it on
Yeah.
LinkedIn like around like December 8th of 2021, and I was scared. I was like, all right, I have no idea how this is going to go. But I was like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is it like doesn't get that many likes or whatever.
Yeah.
It like ended up getting close to 1,000 likes and a bunch of reshares and like all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh wow, people like really resonate with this
Yep.
idea, and sponsors are coming. Like we have Google and Spotify and like all these like super dope companies like sponsoring and covering the seats of some students that aren't able to pay. And then we got a bunch of applicants. Like it just became like dominoes, where it's just like, okay, yeah, this is like something I want to do. So that was like super memorable. Is like I was getting notifications like at one point I was getting like 10 notifications a minute or whatever like that. Like just people liking,
Jeez.
sharing, commenting, posting about it on their own. Like that was super dope. So I think that would be my second most memorable one. My third most memorable one is, it's like literally after every cohort graduates, like I almost always tear up because I'm always just like, all right, y'all, this is our last class. I don't know like what you want me to say or whatever. Like it's just it gets like really like
Yeah.
emotional. It's like, hey, we've been together for 12 weeks. Like the dynamic that I have with our students and graduates is like so different. It's like night and day compared to like what my relationship was with like my professors and other teachers, right? It's just so
Yeah.
much different. So, you know, I tell them some real shit, right? So like when I was going through some serious stuff last year, I was like, hey, y'all, like I'm going through some stuff. People are there, you know, and people supported me. Like it was important for me to show um, yeah, it's important for me to show resiliency, but also like it's important for me to show vulnerability. It's not like all roses all the time, right?
Yep.
So yeah, it was like every graduation, like we've had three cohorts so far, and like literally every single like time I have to say like, hey y'all, this is like our last class. Obviously, you're a part of the community. We're gonna have our Slack up. We're gonna have all these things up that you're gonna be able to be part of, and no one's gonna ghost each other and all that stuff. Once you're a Useful School student, you're a Useful School person for life, like that kind of thing. But there's always like that, like, is this goodbye? Is this see you later? Is it like,
Yeah.
how do you end a class? It's very difficult. How do you end a class, right? Like this whole like philosophically, um, like what's the best thing to say? What's the best thing to do? And all of that kind of stuff. And what I've realized is one of the best things to do is reflect on the class, talk about like what people's favorite things were. A lot of times we'll like nominate each other for like superlatives, kind of like what we used to do in high school, like most
Yeah.
likely to do this, you know, that kind of thing. We'll ask them who their favorite speaker was. We'll ask students like, you know, how do they want to stay involved in the future. Like we'll ask them a lot of things that like really help with like the awkwardness of like me having to say goodbye, but at the same time like giving a lot of value to each other and understanding, all right, well, how do you want to be involved? How do you want to like be part of this thing in the future? Like all of that kind of stuff is like really nice conversation. So I would say like that's probably like my third memorable thing that, like I said, happens every cohort is just like the graduation stuff.
Yeah. You're like really affecting people's lives. Like you're sending them off with like value, like real value.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, but what I also realized is like after the first cohort is, you know, the best time to like do a quote unquote like feedback or like an exit survey or whatever, instead of like sending something like
Oh yeah.
later, is just doing it while all the classes together. And so what we do is like we do breakouts. They say like what their outcomes were and their overall feelings about useful school and like their updated portfolio and like their favorite screenshots of things that they've made and all this stuff. And like that, it's such a dope conversation about like that everyone can have over the course of a couple hours of like how everybody feels, what their opinions are. They show off the stuff that they've made, and that's really beautiful. And so yeah, I'm like, it's like unlike any other like graduation experience I've ever had. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's been super dope.
Dope. Fire. I love that. Okay, let's hop into the next question. This one's a little bit more random. So, what would you do if you could live forever?
Dude, I would love to be a personal stylist.
Like
That'd
clothing?
be so much fun. Like one of my favorite things to do is take like friends, family, whatever, like to clothing stores and have them. I challenge them to choose something in the store that's like 1 degree away from what they would choose. Like it's like just a little bit outside their comfort zone. Like that's one of my favorite things to do because it's like exposes them to like something new that they wouldn't have considered trying. And once
Yeah.
they like buy that thing, then the next time they come around with me and go shopping, then it's like, all right, let's go 1 degree from that. And like before you know it, like after a couple of shopping sessions with them, it's just like their wardrobe is looking different. Like and it's like a whole different vibe of confidence and everything. So I would love to be a personal shopper or like some sort of personal stylist or whatever. Like that would be a lot of fun. I would obviously love to continue useful school. I've got ideas on like how the future could look like. And you had actually mentioned that, so let me get back to that really quickly. I would love to do more classes. I would love to like it would be sick to do like some sort of like alternative to college.
That would
In
be
some sort of
sick.
way. Like that would be
Yeah.
really interesting. Like I don't know how many years it would be, but let's say like a 2 to 4 year program would be
Yeah.
cool. A K through 12 kind of thing would be super dope. Whether it's like a legitimate like substitute to like an 8 hour a day type of thing, or it's
Yeah.
like an after school program or something, like that would be really sick. That'd be really cool. What else would I do if I could live forever? Okay, so would I age? Like, am I aging in this?
No. We'll say no. Where you're locked in at where you are right now.
I'm locked in.
Locked in.
Okay, got you. I'm working on this right now, and my goal is to just perform just once in 2023. Like, I want to do a live, semi-improvised, like, dance music project where, like, I'm like, DJing and triggering samples and stuff, but I have, like, a trumpet player, sax player,
Oh.
maybe a vocalist on top, and, like, they're, like, improvising on top of that. Like, that would be sick. Like, I'm a huge fan of house music and techno, so like
Okay.
doing something like that would be super dope. Underground Resistance is like a huge inspiration. I mentioned it earlier. They like do some really cool performances sometimes where they do like all the musicians generally like get up on stage and they perform live and stuff. It's
It's
incredible. So that's like inspiration of mine. Those are. I'm trying to look around right now and see if I can think of anything else. If I could live forever, I would finish reading all these books. Like I bought a bunch of these books, and also like I have a bunch of records down here too. Like
Yeah.
I would like want to just like go through all of them. There's a bunch of books I just bought that I would love to just like go through at some point. Let me show you. Let me show you a couple.
Are you like most designers where we buy a bunch of books and never read them?
Yeah. Like, here's a good example. Like, it's still in the plastic. Like, what is good design?
I've seen that one.
If
Yeah.
not design, if good. Like, that one. Literally in the plastic still. How many female type designers do you know?
Oh, I've never heard of that one.
I know many and talk to some. Yeah. I would... I've mentioned this to a few of my colleagues and stuff. Like, I don't... The whole thing about male versus female is problematic for me. Like, I would say, like, how many women or non-binary type designers do you know?
Yeah.
Instead of female. But that's just something. Oh, this is one of my favorite books. This is We Are Here.
Oh,
This
I've never
one's
seen that
super dope.
before.
Visionaries of color transforming the art world. There's some incredible folks in here. Like, I got this from Mass Mocha, the art museum in Massachusetts. That was really dope. What other stuff am I looking to do and continue reading? I would say like those are 3 or 4 that I would love to just like actually start.
Tear through.
There's a bajillion others. I can talk about books all day long, but yeah, there's a bajillion others.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Getting back to the stylist, I thought that was interesting. Would you say you have good style?
Hey, the people have said it, not me. The people have said it, not me. Yeah, I would say I try. I try my best.
Okay.
I try to. The way I like think about like style for me is, first of all, like I don't like wearing logos.
Okay.
It's pretty rare for me to do that, and if I was to wear logos, then I would it would have to be like I would have to be very judicious about it. So like right now I'm wearing like this, that's like kind of a spoof on New York Yankees.
Yeah.
I'm wearing like a pizza shirt, like that's all about New York. But generally speaking, I'm like my shoes, my shorts, my shirts, like other accessories and accoutrements, all that stuff is like logoless pretty much. So I like doing that because like if I'm gonna rep a logo, like I would want to know the creator. I would want to know like all these things about it.
Who are you supporting and like what are you supporting?
Sometimes you just don't know. So like I like really want to, because when I go purchase something, like I'll ask a lot of questions, right? Like some of the places I go to shop, like I'll ask some specifics and stuff like that about some of the stuff, because I want to feel really good. I want to feel good about the stuff I purchase. I'm like in a buy less, buy better scenario right now where I'm like, I like really don't buy anything right now unless I like really, really need it. So that's where I'm at right now, and I have like a bag of clothes that have like really cool things on them or within them or something, but I don't want to wear the entire thing, so I'm working on like cutting it up and then sewing it on to something else and like kind of making that stuff like remix. So like doing some upcycling stuff I'm pretty stoked about.
Fire.
But yeah. And I'll go to stores all over New York if I am going shopping for something. I'll go all different price ranges and things like that. But it's very, very rare now that I'm like buying clothes. I'm trying to make everything that I currently have my own.
I love that. That's how I want to get. Like I really want to get into screen printing, and like some of the ideas I have, I'm trying to figure out the process of it, but I would love to wear my own stuff because I know what I'm about versus wearing like what other people's stuff is about. So yeah, that's sick. I love that.
And what's challenging about, and one of the reasons why like I haven't like started like a useful school merch line, like a bunch of like students and be like, when's the merch coming out? Like I'd love to rock it, blah blah blah. I would love to do that, but like I would want to make sure that like the supply chain is ethical, or as ethical as it can be. Like I would also want to make sure that the stuff isn't too expensive, because in an ideal world I would love to have the merch be like pay what you can, similar to like how the classes are. Like that would be really great. I'm not sure if that would be possible, but that'd be cool. And in order to make that happen, I can't make every t-shirt $200 or something, right?
No.
Like that would just be like make no sense. So I'm like trying to like make sure that I'm able to balance, quality, ethics, and all of that stuff that goes into it. But yeah, at some point it'd be dope to come out with a merch line. I've got some ideas, and it's gonna be sick.
If you want to chat about it, I'm always down. Like that's my new
down.
interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do want it to be ethical, but I also like I'm artist to the core, so I want it to be like good quality. I want you to be able to like take this shirt and be able to put it in something and hang it on a wall, because that's how like good it's put together. So yeah, I'm so down for that.
I've always like I had this idea, a little while ago, like where I would love, instead of like putting my clothes like in a drawer or something like that, like I would love to have like whatever's in rotation like that week, like I would love to hang it up and like it's like displayed really beautifully like in a nice frame, and then like so instead of like pulling out a drawer, like I'm like opening up like this beautiful like glass pane, and then I'm like grabbing it and then I'm putting it, so it's like because I think of a lot of my clothes that I have like as wearable art. So like I would want to like
That's fire. Like, that's fire. I love
sick,
that.
Dude, right?
Yeah.
So it would be sick. Like I'm looking at it right now, like I'm looking at some of my clothes right now, and be like, I would love to like put that stuff in like a dope frame, and like every week or whatever, I would like rotate them out, and I would have like the next 5 things or whatever that are hanging up.
That brings new respect to clothing, because like that's the problem with it, right? It's like unethical, it's fast fashion, but that brings respect to it, where you're like, I'll put this on display in my house, like in my living room. You got my shirt that I love the most. Like that's sick.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about right now. Like it'd be sick. Like going back to your previous question, like if I was to live as long as I could, and stay like in like my current state, like it would be really sick to explore like more stuff related to fashion, related to styling, things like that. Because I think there's a lot of opportunity to like make some dope stuff there.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard of the show Hype. I've been obsessed with it. Like they have 2 seasons on HBO Max, and I've watched them both. We'll probably rewatch them, but street fashion and like it's just so like hard to me. Like it has so much emotion to it, and like so much culture, and so much, it just feels so black to me that I'm so drawn to it right now. So fashion is definitely like on my list to like, hey, how can I kind of move over there and understand how that kind of works? So
yo, dude, that's dope. It would be sick to see like your like what you do next, like with your fashion stuff. Like I'd be super down. I'll rep it. Let me know.
Oh shoot, now I got to do it. Like
yeah, let me know. Like no bullshit, but like the way I started USO school, like I was just like, I just put a date on the calendar. I was like, December 8th. That's when I'm announcing it.
Yeah.
And I just worked backwards, like figuring out like, all right, what do I need to do to get done or whatever. And it forced me to make decisions that I otherwise would not have made. Like it forced me to be like, all right, let me, instead of building this huge platform that host all these videos and it's like TikTok, Instagram thing that I talked about before, like just scale it down. Like let's just build a couple of pages on Webflow. Let's do a school that's virtual instead of in person. Like let's do a pay what you can instead of this and that. So like, yeah, if you just like say, yo, I'm just going to like launch a line by September 30th and my goal is just to like launch one shirt, it'll force you to, you to like make decisions that you might not have thought you needed to make at the time. So you might end up spending like 3 weeks just looking for like a good source for like a clothing source rather than maybe like a decade. Right?
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, and then what you could do is like you could spend those 3 weeks, and then like as you're doing that, then you're like also like looking for art like you might want to do, like feels that good, and then you might be like, oh, never mind, that this supplier doesn't feel right, let me go to the next one, and then you're like looking at Reddit forums, like find like other suppliers, then you're asking like your favorite clothing brands where they get their supply from, like you can do like all these like kind of like scrappy things that feel really good and fun, and like it just makes it happen. But yeah, September 30th, let me know.
My ADHD brain loves that. Now I don't have to think about what I'm supposed to be doing today.
Yeah.
All right. This is a podcast about creativity, so I always ask this question last. What does creativity mean to you?
I would say creativity is about being confident. I would say it's like about being confident in your decisions and knowing that it's better to create something and put it out in the world, even if it isn't perfect. I would say creativity and design is never done. It's not like perfection is a lie. Some of my favorite art has some sort of quote unquote imperfection to it, and that's what makes it really real and raw. Yeah, I think I'll end it at that.
Yeah, I love that. Because I think I heard a quote where they were talking about like creativity. Yeah, it's never like art is never done. We just ran out of time. Like it's something that's always be iterated on, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think like going off of that, I think it would be really cool. And we're talking about like ADHD very briefly earlier, where like I would love to like release a book or some sort of video or whatever that's called like an anthology of like unfinished projects, and just everybody comes out of the woodwork and they just like say like, yeah, this is a project I've had like in my like Illustrator file for like 20 years. I'm never gonna launch this, to be honest, but like throw it in there. Like I would like love to see like unfinished work, and I think there's beauty in being unfinished. Like there's beauty in like not being completely done or perfect or you know, quote unquote coded or I'm sorry, quote unquote like professional, because that's like a coded word for like whiteness, like things like that. Like just like even if it's unfinished, just like show it to people, because the people who are like real, I would say like real friends or real colleagues or real family, they'll like tell you if it's good or not, or at least if they think it's good or not. And they'll give you honest feedback, be like, oh yeah, why aren't you sharing this with more people? Or they'll say like, hey, I think this needs like a little, like a, you know, another round, you know. Like, so that's what I always like try to encourage doing. Like I'm trying to do this interpersonally as well, where instead of like me like spending like weeks on end thinking about the perfect solution and then telling it to people, which is what I used to do, I'm much more of the ilk right now where I will spend a little bit of time thinking about something, but then I'll share it and be like, hey, this is really rough, this is raw, but like can we talk about the solution that I'm thinking about like right now, because I'd much rather get feedback right now than burn weeks to try to come up with a perfect solution only for you to say like you don't like it. So I'm like working on like being, and this is very hard for people of color, to like be more vulnerable with their work and just show it off a little bit earlier, because when you're vulnerable, it allows, I would argue, the work to be better, and it reduces the stress of like having to like be quote unquote done or
imperfect,
like finished before showing it off. Obviously you don't want to launch an app when a bunch of stuff is broken. That's not what I'm saying. But like early on, when you're trying to think of like what that app could look like, or what your clothing design could look like, or what your poetry could sound like, or whatever, like it's good to share it a little bit earlier and often than to just keep it to yourself. And that goes for a lot of things. That's helped me with like my relationships, like interpersonal relationships. That's helped me with my work. That's helped me with useful school. That's helped me with a lot of things. So yeah, I hope that's useful to people.
Dang, that's sick. I love that, because that. Most of the time there's this wall. Like we put this wall here where it's like, I got to climb this wall before I can show it to you. But if you take that wall down and be like, well, let's just have an open conversation. Quick story. I used to work in an agency where we would do like brand work, but we build brands in 8 hours in front of the client. So there was a lot of like vulnerability and conversation being had that you wouldn't normally have through like email, but it allowed people to be honest, and you could see their honesty on their face and how they moved about the room. And it just worked. Like I think vulnerability is something that we have pulled out of design that could be very helpful in kind of how we move about and making good stuff, making solid work, making things that actually work for people and aren't just like, oh, I thought this was cool. And it's like,
Yeah.
what?
I totally see that. Like at Hyperakt, like D-Roy who founded Hyperakt, he co-founded it with Julia. He was always like, hey, Ritesh, as design director, I was design director at the time. He was like, our job at the early part of the process is just making sure with the client we're in the right zone. Like, are we speaking the same language? Like, are the mood boards and the rough concepts, like, are people feeling it? Is that in the right zone? Don't necessarily worry about kerning and worry about some of the more specific stuff that non-designers might not know about. Just make sure you're in the right zone and make sure you're asking the right questions to get there, right? And actually, Felipe, who's actually one of our graduates for our most recent advanced branding class, he did like the dopest thing during discovery that he presented to the rest of the class. And what he does during his discovery, when he starts concepting and mood boarding and all of that, he asks clients, like, where do you want to take your customer? You know, something like that. Like, where do you want to take them? Are you taking them to 1960s France on a tennis court? Are you taking them to a bougie yoga studio in Soho? Are you taking them to, you know, somewhere else? Like, what is it? Where are you taking? Where are you taking your user? Where are you taking your customer? How does the thing feel? And so, getting to those questions and those answers to those questions with the clients can be like really fun. And if you don't do those types of things, especially as a growing designer, when you're working with clients, or like even if you're doing your own personal branding work, or like maybe you're doing a clothing line, or like you're doing, or you know, something like that, it's hard. It's hard to not struggle, because if you don't really know where you're taking everybody, you don't really necessarily know like what the right typography should be, what the right color palette should be, whatever. And then you get relegated to like choosing a font just because it feels good, like just because you've seen it a lot, or because it, you know, has some sort of like trendiness factor or whatever. So that's what I try to impart.
I love that.
On local design. Isn't it dope? Yeah,
that's so dope. Like, because you can feel it. Like as a like if I'm on the other side of the table as a client, I'm like, I can feel like I know what the vibe is, and now I'm trying to feel the work that you're presenting me, which is completely different than just presenting something cold and they're like, this gives me nothing. So
right.
Where can people find you on the internet, and is there anything that you want to plug? Obviously,
I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I love this. All right, let's see. Plug. We've got Useful School cohort number 4. Applications are closing August 18th, and we will start our classes the first week of September. We've got advanced branding, advanced product design, beginner product design, decolonization, and financial wellness. 5 classes.
Fire.
It'll be dope. Like, some of our speakers and guests have already started sharing their participation. It's going to be sick. I'm really, really excited. And yeah, because I'm doing this full time now, I'm able to, you know, shepherd 5 classes rather than do 2 or 3 at a time. So I'm super amped. The cohort is looking great. We still got some spots available. So yeah, if you want to be a student, feel free to apply. usefulschool.com/apply. If you want to like read more about Useful School, check out our About Us page, which, funny enough, is actually our like second most visited page on our website, which is super dope. And yeah, just like check all that stuff out. Do the things. If you want to follow us, go on our handle's usefulschool.com. Our Twitter got Useful School. LinkedIn, I'm there on LinkedIn. Feel free to hit me up there.
All right. Thank you so much, Ritesh. This has been great. I enjoyed it. You always have so much wisdom. I've listened to a couple other things that you've done, and I'm like, I got to have this guy on. So thank you so much.
I could do this for hours, dude. I could do this for hours. If we're trying to do a follow-up or whatever at some point, like, I can just do this for hours.
Fire.
The other thing, one other thing is, if people want to be like special guests for our students, feel free to email me, ritesh@usefulschool.com. If you're part of a company and you want to have Useful School do workshops for your employees, or if you want to sponsor Useful School in any other way, email me, ritesh@usefulschool.com. Yeah, I think those are like my main plugs.
Fire. All right. Thank you so much. You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye, Cam.
All right, peace. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Creative Questions. Like, comment, or subscribe to allow us to keep making more episodes. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.